Our design thinkers, my name is Matthew Sear, and recently Figma has just released a few new updates on how we can use our variables. We can now apply them directly to our effects inside of Figma. We're going to go through how to actually do that and how we're going to directly apply our variables to our shadowing, and we are going to create a dynamic shadowing variable system, and we'll be able to put that one together in this video. So if you'd like to learn a little bit about how to apply variables to your effects and how to take that to the next level, then you're in the right place. Let's jump into the video. All right, here we are inside of Figma. Let's get started with creating a new way that we can create our shadowing. So over here, I have a few different levels of shadowing, and I used to have my actual effects applied to these levels. What we can do now is we can actually apply them directly as variables. And as an extra little fun thing, I'd like to also introduce how we could then take that to the next level and allow ourselves to be able to control the shadowing dynamically using those layers and giving us more options over the way that we can apply our effects. So if you'd like to be able to just apply them, we'll get through that first, and then in the second piece we're going to go through and we're going to set something more fun where you'll be able to control a lot more like dynamic nuances of your shadowing effect. All right, so let's get started. We are going to just do the normal one to begin with. How can we easily set up our own shadowing inside of Figma? We're going to grab that square and I'll just lock it in the background. And I will also just grab my block. Let's go over here. We're going to actually apply ourselves an effect. Over on this effect, we have basically our X and our Y, as well as a shadow, which has basically an alpha percentage. We have a blur and we have a spread. How do these work? Our X, when adding to our X, our shadow will move to the right. When taking away from our X, our shadow will move to the left. When taking away from the Y, our shadow will move up. And when adding to the Y, our shadow will move down. And that's because we use an X and Y position, and X and Y will always start at the top left corner, and then they will add going inwards and going down. So that's X and Y. Let's decide on a couple of numbers for our initial how to just apply variables directly to our shadow. And we can easily just simply make it. To start with, we're gonna look at this. I'm gonna choose a kind of dark blue, and and the reason why is because most shadows have a bit of a color. And I'm going to also move this shadow just off center, about one there. I'm going to move it down a little bit. I'm going to increase that shadow, and I'm going to reduce this to about 10. So if I was to turn this to being white, like so, it would look like that. You can also set up a double shadow, and if you wanted to set up a double shadow, the goal is to give it that little bit of a harder edge. So we will take something like this, maybe set it to a 1. We'll reduce the blur to a 2, and that would actually give you a much more harder defined shadow without pushing the shadow and blurring it out a lot more as they're layered. It gives you that really nice, strong, harder edge around the actual thing. So that's cool. There we go. And over here, basically, I have two sets of actual numbers. I have a set here and a set there. Let's say I'll make that blur an 8. So like that. So all we'll need to do for like setting a default, we will need to have a collection that's going to define these values. And for example, I've done 2 there. Maybe I want to have this shadow specifically. So I'm going to go up to my new collection. I'm going to go up to collection. I'm going to add a new collection in this one. So let's go to, there we go. We got a new collection. I'm going to call this one my shadow, like that. I have 2 X and Y. So we will start with X. I'll duplicate that one, put that one on Y. Now I've got 2 of my numbers. And easily enough, what I can do is I could, for example, just show that, take a screenshot. I'm going to chuck that one over there. And I'm also going to open up the other one. And also take another screenshot. And that will be an easy way for me to just reference as I'm actually building out my variables. So I got my first shadow here, and this one was that sharper one. And what I can do is I can add in, I'm going to use just the one color across both of these two. You could go with 2 if you like. Maybe if you wanted to keep them different percentages, but we're going to make 1. Keep it simple. This will just be my shadow. And now we need our blur. And our spread as well, which is a number. I'm going to keep the, just for this, I can keep the same spread. You couldn't separate it out, add an extra, you just make you'll make 2 different blurs, 2 different spreads. It's completely up to you, but I will have only 2 different blurs, but I'll maintain the same spread. I'm not going to make this one complicated. Duplicate. And this one is an 8. This will be the blur soft. This will be the blur hard. Really completely up to you how you want to actually make this. I will add in that color and I will reduce the alpha to 10. Now, because I'm keeping the blur and the spread the same, the shadow and the spread the same, I'll leave those there. But what I can do is I added this hard and added this soft. So the first one over here would be my hard. So I'm going to actually probably just take that way from this group. And I will group these into a new group, and I'm just going to call this one hard. And I will take those, I'll take the soft one. Oh, I'm going to create a new group and I'll call this one soft. And we'll just need to have our X and Y. So just duplicate that twice. And I will just go X, Y. And what I can do is I can add that 1 and that 3, or maybe make it 4, and we're pretty good with that. So hard, and then we got our soft, okay? And this can be 0, and that can be 1, and we are done. Overall, what we have here is our base spread, which is across the both, and then we have a shadow, and then we have a hard and a soft version. So now we can easily apply that directly to our asset here. So I can click over here. Now, this top one will be my hard, my soft. No, yeah, my hard. So I will go down here. I'm going to apply hard on the X, and I will go over here and I will apply the hard on the Y. I will go over to the blur, and I will add in that blur as well, which was the, sorry, I also have the other one set up. Hard blur, there we go. And we're using the same spread. So we can go back here and use that. And now we can apply our color. So we can right click, or just click on here, jump into a library. And if we go down to our static shadow collection, there is the color right there called shadow. I'm going to remove those out of the way. We can zoom in here. So I did the first one, and now I can do the second one. So I can go and start to apply my soft. So soft on the X, and I can apply the soft on the Y. And I can now go to these right here, and I can apply the, I can apply that color. That's static, and which is there, like where we got the 8, and we can use the same spread. There we go. So now we have our actual variables applied directly to our asset, and they're layered over one another. And now that we have our shadow, which is really cool. This denotes basically one of our shadow styling. Great thing is that what we can do is we can go back to our static shadow, and as you can notice, we have one mode. So maybe this one is small, and then maybe we can add in another one, and this one could be our medium. And then what we can do is simply adjust the values. So let's keep this one, the hard one, fairly similar. Maybe we knock it up by just 1 point each, and then maybe for our soft we increase that to 4, that to 8, maybe that to 16, and maybe on a spread we do a 5 overall. Now we can easily access our variable here. We can go, we have static shadow, and we have static shadow medium, which allows us to get the next one in the lot. Now we can look at it, now we can see it. Because we can see it, we can need to probably adjust these values, because the values, I say, don't quite look quite right or nice. So easily enough, I can go over here, go to my local collection. I can actually move my screen over here, and I can simply, maybe I set that back to 0. Now I got that edge, and if anything, it actually doesn't look too bad. Maybe we either drop the shadow down because it's lifted up, maybe we increase the shadow more, maybe this one here we increase more, and maybe this one over here we actually, maybe that's 5, and maybe this one is 10. It's really up to you from this point. So now you can just easily add in more of the different styles of shadow into your list, and you'll be able to break that apart. To have a little bit more control in here, I would recommend splitting off, for example, your spread into 2 lots, meaning that you could put one in hard and one in soft, allowing you a little bit more nuance and control. So overall, that is how we can set up a very basic version of different styles on our shadows. And all we need to do from here is we could simply click on this here, and we could actually just save this as a style. So, oopsie. I'll remove that one. So we could easily simply go to here, add it, create it as a style, and this one could be my variable shadow style. And now I have a variable shadow style that I can actually apply to any of my objects. I can go over and I can even directly apply my variable shadow style to the one that I just made to any object. Bear in mind, currently, one of the little bugs that I've seen in here is that sometimes these will, if you adjust this or edit this, it will break some of the connections. You're going to have to reset all the connections again if you edit it. But if you've saved it, it seems to stay as is for this time being, bearing in mind Figma's still in beta. Okay. If you just wanted to see how to apply variables directly to your assets and using and creating new shadow effects, this is the basic part. I'm about to step into the more advanced part. Strap in and let's get stuck into creating one that is a lot more dynamic than this. All right. So over here, I have my existing shadow. What I have is I got a blur value amount, which I've set up, and that will control for how much blur that I want. I also will have over there, I got my shadow strength. This is the strength that as how strong that color is, which is controlled by my alpha and my color set. I also have a control for the direction of the shadow. Is the shadow moving left? Is the shadow moving right? Is the shadow on the bottom, or is the shadow on the top? Or is it neither? I also have the distance, the amount of lift that the shadow could be. So is the shadow right on the top, no lift at all? Is the shadow got a lot of lift? And I'd got that both on X, and I got that as well on Y. So now we have a very dynamic control color, and we could basically make only one of these. And we could apply that directly to our effect, and it will come in and directly allow us complete control of this within the boundaries that we set. How do we make this? It's a little complicated, but let's walk through it. I'm not going to make it all. I'm going to just walk through it in this video to allow you the opportunity to see how you could make it for yourself. We've already applied these, so we will move away from our static. What we will need is, to start with, you'll need to have some sort of alpha color scheme. I did this one here. This would be my light, this would be my dark, and all this is a single color, and it either has 0 opacity, so it's completely transparent, or it's almost not transparent. And I have the reverse on the dark mode, because when you flip to dark, you would ideally want the more shadow to be stronger to make the shadow pop off a little bit more on a darker background. So you would flip it around to control for the strength. Now, ideally, light is fine. Creating just one, you'll be fine. Next, I have my blur values. Very simple. I created one single collection for blur with only one value, which is blur. And I have 8, 16, 25, and 50. You can pick whatever blur values you want. Obviously, we have only a choice of if you don't have the ultimate Figma version where it allows you as many modes as you like. If you got just 4, you got 4. And having 4 here is basically good enough. We have 4 levels to choose from, and the reason why we split this here is because every collection that you make, that you add into another collection, will give you basically a little thing. Right here, because I have a single collection, and that single collection has this scaling value, I now have here the blur scaling value. Really nice and easy to create a blur scaling value. Next, let's create our other actual values to scale with. Because we had the color, so remember we had the shadow and we have the shadow set up, that's great. Now we can actually create our own shadow strength scale. So here's my shadow strength, and I called it shadow strength, and I only created one because I only need one. If you want, you can always have different options for different shadow strengths, or maybe even not shadows. But for here, I created a low, medium, high, and none. And none allows me the ability to turn it off. For example, over here, I have my shadow strength. I could turn off, my shadow is gone. I could add in a low shadow strength, and it's very faint. And that is great if I wanted that. So remember, using a collection allows you the ability to switch the modes in the collection. Sometimes you can be very detailed, so you can do this. So now we have our strength. Fantastic, we built that one. Well, let's go on to the more complicated. Now we got X and Y. There are basically our coordinates. And if you remember what I was saying before, if this was our box and we wanted to move an object, this reminds me of when I used to make games. When we wanted to move an object down, we would be moving it on our Y value. So our Y goes up and down. So we move down, we're adding. And if we move up, we're minusing, so we're taking away. So for us to move our shadow up or down, we will need to either plus or minus a value. So we'll need to have something to plus and minus. And we'll need to plus and minus in the right way, because Y goes up and down, and X goes right and left. Like Y, but on the other direction, on our horizontal axis, we'll add as we move inwards, or we'll subtract as we move outwards. And it will be minus based on this little origin point right here. So if this was a little X, little cross section, it'll be minus here, it'll be plus there. It'll be minus up here, and it'll be plus down here. Right? So what I have set up down here is I just made a very simple collection. It's got a plus, it's got a minus, and it has nothing, because you could have nothing. Having nothing is meaning that your shadow stays on the spot. So if I was doing my X, which is the one I have right now, if we look across here, 0, 0, 0, doesn't move, it's on the spot. Next one over here, 1, so if we set it to 1, it will move a little that way, inwards. We set it to the 2, which is the minus, then it would move that way. if we set it to like here, 8 or the -8, 8 will more that way and more that way, and so on with the 3. It's like more that and more that. Play around with the numbers, but basically there we go. We've got a very simple actual scale. And what this scale is doing, I said this is an X, and this is to do with the lift. So if we were to look at our shape, I have this thing called a lift, and I will, let's say, I'm going to take the, yeah, let's take all of these down. I'll take that to 0, take that to 0. I'm going to make it a strong shadow, and I'll make it a low blur and make it very, so as you can see, it's fuzzy all around. That means it's all on spot. It's not in any direction. Lift is when if this was paper, the paper would lift higher off the surface, meaning that the shadow would project further away. You wouldn't see the lift when I just do it right on top, but for example, if I switch the direction of the lift, now we can see that the shadow moves left, and it looks like the actual object is higher and the light's coming from the actual right hand side. Same for the bright, and that's basically it. And lift will make that shadow closer to the shape. So we're going to do one for lift, for X, and I'll show you the one for Y. Feel free to, I don't know, take a screenshot, and you can add in these values and you can play with them yourself. So now we've got the Y, similar to what we had before. Okay, we've got both X and Y lift, fantastic. Let's set up the directions. So we got our directions. The directions are very simple. The directions just take what we had in our X and Y lift, and they actually just apply them in a different way. So when it comes to Y, Y is up and down. And because Y is up and down, we want to add to make the shadow go down. So if the shadow was on top of the center of the object, if we wanted it to go down, we'll need to add. If we wanted it to go up, we would need to take away. If we didn't want anything to happen, nothing happens. That is our Y. Let's go to our X, very much like our Y, but a different way around. If we wanted it to go right, we'll need to add. And if we wanted it to go left, we'll need to take it away. So we use a different plus and minuses. These are the plus and minuses that we pull directly from our lift. So that's why we needed our lift first, so we can add them in here. And then we also have the none, which is basically nothing at all, it's 0. So now we've done both X, Y, we've got the direction, we've got the lift, awesome. And finally, we just need to wrap all of this up into our effect. And here we are. We have our shadow. We only have one, but you could make many different variations if you like. But we've got one here, and what I have done is simply add in the X from the direction and the Y from the direction, and added in the blur, and I just added a 0 spread, and I also added in that shadow strength. So now any object that we want to apply that collection to, all we need to do, very much like what we did from the start, where we simply saved this off as a style, we could easily make sure that we check our effect, and we actually just simply save that off as a style. And now all we need to do is grab that like style, and we can easily start to play around and customize it, and yeah, just go to town on the way that we want our shadowing to work. So I hope that this video has been some helpful, and you've learned a couple of tips and tricks to do with shadowing and shadowing effects and so on. And I will see you guys all in the next video, where we go through a couple of additions where we look at how we can create different types of focus effects and use our variables dynamically as well, potentially even animating these effects as well. So I look forward to getting into the next video. Until next time, design thinkers, keep thinking, keep building, and keep creating amazing things. And I'll see you all in the next video.